how to conduct online classes effectively, we can share all that with you.
Okay,
So you can write back to us on the same ID via which the link was shared with you. So I would formally, would want to start today's webinar. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
I'm happy to welcome all of you.
Good evening, sir.
437 of you logged in so far.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yes. So there are certain ground rules which we need to follow since we are large in number. I would request you all to use the chat box to respond rather than your microphone.
Hello, sir.
Because it affects others also. So let us all put our microphones on mute. So on behalf of all of us, I welcome Viswanath sir, and here comes Viswanath sir, smiling. Namaste sir, how are you?
Namaste Dhiren, how are you?
I am good sir, how are you?
Very good, pleasure to meet you, pleasure to see you here.
Same here sir, the pleasure is entirely mine. So I would like to start today's discussion with a small personal information.
Okay.
It was about 1.5 years ago that I get a call from somebody in Hyderabad saying that we are in Raipur, can we meet? Like, okay. He said, the founder of our company is also going to be there with me. And I was not very sure, who am I going to meet? And excited to meet an educator. I said, fine, let us meet. And the next day around 1 o'clock, I see this face, Viswanath sir's face, in my office. And I'm like, wow. And then we had a couple of hours of interaction. Let me tell you, sir, I was sharing it with my team. When we were preparing for this webinar, I was sharing with my team that I did not know that a great personality has visited my office. And only after, having those 3 hours of interaction, knowing about Karadi Tales, I realized that, we as education consultants who claim to know everything did not know that there could be a very, very innovative way to teach English to first generation native learners. So, sir, let me congratulate you, first of all, to have initiated something like Karadi. The country is thankful to you for doing that.
Thank you very much.
And as a custom, dear teachers and principals, let me formally introduce Viswanath sir to you all. I'm sure today's numbers, needn't give any introduction. I mean, the way our numbers are, we needn't give sir's introduction, but still I would like to take this opportunity to inform you all professionally who we are going to interact. So we're going to interact with Mr. C.P. Viswanath, who is an educator, musician, and entrepreneur. Now, these are 3 qualities which are very rare to find in one person: musician, educator, and an entrepreneur. And he's the co-founder of and CEO of Karadi Tales and Karadi Path. These companies are revolutionizing how differently and how innovatively languages, especially English language, can be taught to first generation native learners. Viswanath sir is also the Director of Pedagogy. That's why I requested him to come and address us today. He's the Director of Pedagogy for Isha Vidhya Rural Schools, which is run by the ISHA Foundation, Coimbatore. And ISHA Foundation has 9 schools, and they're supporting close to 3,000 government schools in learning better. Sir is a Carnatic classical vocalist who was given 1,000 public performance as a vocalist. And we are fortunate, sir, we are thankful to you that you spared your time, because usually you will find Viswanath sir speaking on education, speaking on publishing and speaking at events like TEDx, CII, FICCI conferences, seminars, speaking and addressing national meets of CBSE, ICSE, and he's also spoken at the Royal Institute of Great Britain. So once again, sir, thank you so much. Now let me tell you what Karadi Tales is, because some of you might feel why Viswanath sir to address us today. Karadi Tales has been an integral part of thousands of childhoods in India and across the world. Not only our country, but across the world. The products have consistently set new standards of excellence and have been acclaimed and awarded internationally, not just nationally, internationally. Karadi Path's radically unique approach to language learning has demonstrated significantly higher outcomes and learning efficiencies. This has led over 3,200 schools and 750,000 children to adopt Karadi Path as a superior alternative to conventional methods. So Karadi Path and most of life schools, the schools which we set up, the curriculum doesn't complete without Karadi being an integral part of it. That's my personal belief in Karadi and Karadi's methodology. Once again, I would not like to take much of everybody's time. Viswanath sir, welcome once again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Namaste, and allow me also to reciprocate your very, very warm introduction. It's been an absolute pleasure knowing you. And being in the space that we are, we do come across a lot of education consultants. So it is not, it's a common, profession that we meet. But very sincerely, let me say that, in the time that I have known you, I have not known anybody take so much of an intense and personal effort in the work that, you do. And I have seen how involved you are, how hands-on you are when you actually work with the school. And that is, I'm not saying this lightly, I'm saying this with a lot of, responsibility. So I am extremely honored also to, be here and to receive your invitation to be a part of the sharing. And once again, I'm overwhelmed by the number of people who have, joined this webinar today. And I hope that I am able to actually ensure that your time is well spent. I'll try my best.
Thank you so much, sir. So, sir, before we officially started the webinar, we had a lot of questions from somebody from Banaras, somebody from Satna in Madhya Pradesh, somebody from Chhattisgarh about online classes. Now, that's the only choice, what we are left with, especially younger kids. And I've been hearing, various school principals calling us, various teachers trying to interact with us and asking as to what can we do. And there are schools who are just trying to copy and replicate the classroom delivery method. So on behalf of everybody, my first question would be that from face-to-face delivery to an online, platform, a lot of people are using Zoom, which we are using. Now, we know that Zoom and WebEx and all these softwares, they're adult meeting apps. They were, primarily designed for adults to communicate for business purposes. Now, do you think that teaching learning process is being affected because of these mediums? And also, do you think that we need to have some changes in the way we teach, rather some pedagogical changes in the way we are delivering our classes online these days? Please enlighten us.
Now, this is, of course, a very, very current question and a current dilemma for pretty much every educator that is here on this panel and elsewhere. And I think by now, everybody has discovered that there are no easy solutions, in terms of how different stakeholders think. How does a parent think? How does a child think? How does a teacher think? How does a school head think? Because each is driven by a slightly different motivation. We do have the common motivation of learning, but beyond that, there are very specific motivations that drive, each of these separate stakeholders, who are all basically participants in this, teaching learning process at some level or the other. So one of the biggest expectations, and I would humbly, I'm willing to be contradicted, but we have been working with so many schools and I have been talking to so many principals and educators. I think we kind of, in a sense, we trivialized this process of teaching learning in a way by thinking that with 1 month notice, you can just transition to online classes and that these classes are actually going to be effective. So there is no dearth of conversations that I had maybe late March with school owners who said कि हमने हमारे टीचर से किया कि आप PowerPoint slide करो, YouTube जाओ, get resources, etc., see what matches with your syllabus, put it all together, and we will offer online classes. And many schools were online on April 1st. with online classes, so not only for the older classes, but even for the younger classes. Very soon, everything kind of started unraveling because the teacher was finding it difficult, both from a technology standpoint and even from the point of view of how do I communicate through this medium. This medium is not simply a question of doing what I did in the classroom and then coming here and trying to do the same thing with a few tools here and there. So most of the processes were not adequate, the tools were not adequate. And as a result, and there was a third element that came into the picture in a lot of the sharings that have happened, is that parents started judging the teachers in a very different way, because for the first time, they saw the teacher, here, and very quickly came to judgments about, ye theek nahi hai, wo theek nahi hai, all kinds of things, because unless you have stood in front of a class of students, you really don't know what the challenge of handling that responsibility is. And so people, of course, rushed to judgment. And with the online classes, the teachers were definitely struggling. The schools were definitely struggling, with the result that I would find it, if we are honest, we would probably come to the conclusion that it has not been a painless process. It has been actually a very, very painful process. And in terms of trying to just think that a cut and paste process will actually result in an effective classroom, I think that assumption was something that I think that people did not think enough about, especially school heads and school owners. I felt did not adequately think about how difficult it is to transition from get a teacher to go from teaching in the classroom to teach online. I think people who have not taught, especially, thought that this was a kind of a piece of cake, and it is on. And then once again, the lack of empathy for teachers, because I am good at something. Now suddenly you're asking me to become a creator. Suddenly you're asking me to become a great storyteller. Suddenly you're asking me to become a writer. These are specialized professions. Each of them basically require a process of nurturing, learning, and then presenting it to a lot of people and then becoming good at it. Now suddenly you want me to be all of these things in the span of 1 month. Now that's a very, very unreasonable expectation that we put on. It is not that online classes cannot be effective. Online classes can be very, very effective, but they require a very different approach from just taking the textbook and then seeing what parts fit in. And so everything from the process to the tools that you use, apart from the technology tools like Zoom or learning management systems, for example, are probably better suited for some of these situations, but they don't offer some of the benefits that Zoom offers. So which means that you have one set of assets in an LMS, you have a different set of assets in, let us say, a conferencing tool like Zoom, and these two sets of assets don't talk to each other. So once again, you are left with half a solution here, half a solution here. And if you look at how the classes have been going, it is actually a bit of a torture, because I have sat in on some of these classes. If I were a student, I would not be very happy. If I were a teacher, I would also not be very happy, because I'm not getting feedback. I am not getting a sense of how am I actually communicating. I'm not even able to improve myself in the process. The improvement is very, very gradual. So from a fundamental standpoint, I think we were caught by surprise. We tried our best to handle the situation. But at the end of the day, when governments are saying ki online class nahi hona chahiye or whatever, it is like saying that because I was not prepared, now don't rubbish online classes entirely. There is a possibility here, but it requires a different set of skills. It requires a different set of processes. It requires a different set of tools, and it needs to be managed, substantially differently. And at the end of the day, I think we are forced to go with non-experts who pass judgment on how teaching learning should actually be. And that, unfortunately, I think that we can only try to influence as much as we can. But beyond a point, I don't think that we are able to actually make a very big difference in the policies that actually come out.
Sir, thank you so much for putting in the entire situation so crisp In fact, you have also answered my second question, where I wanted you to identify the challenges. Now, there's another question which comes to my mind, and a lot of state governments are trying to do that. And I personally feel that, if we stop any interaction between the school and the primary and pre-primary kids, it is not justice. So whatever is happening all over the country, movement about banning classes up to grade 5, I personally do not believe in that. So I would like to know your opinion that, how do you see this resulting into? Or what could be a possible solution for this?
See, I think that many schools, we ran a series called KARADI PATH, almost about 60 to 65 episodes.
And I was a part of that as a parent.
And you had, thousands of children and thousands of parents tuning in. And, they would come 15 minutes ahead of time. And even if you were 2 minutes late, you will have 100 comments out there saying, "Kyun shuru nahi hua, kab shuru ho raha hai," kind of a thing. Obviously, now these were curated and, constructed with a lot of effort and a lot of experience in storytelling and the mode of communication through the, through the digital medium that we had accumulated over a period of time. So it is not a trick that we learned overnight. It was something that we have been doing for a period of time, and hence it became, so it is possible to keep the engagement, extremely riveting. In fact, this is something that we will talk about a little later in more detail, but there are many schools that conduct the KARADI PATH class online because it is conducted in a very different way. You have a whole set of tools at your disposal, and you have a process which is very well structured, that it becomes very easy for you to actually, conduct the class. For the teacher, it is easy to conduct. And for the student, it is really not screen time, because you have designed it in such a manner that you're very active. See, when we talk of screen time, whether it's a television or whether it is a laptop, these are fantastic devices, which if you know how to use them productively, a knife can be a tool, a very constructive tool or a destructive tool, depending on how you use it. And these are devices where, if you devise the whole process for that particular device, then you can have a very effective, and these classes are places where children are not zombied out in front of the screen. Children are actually taking the screen and doing a lot of activities on the basis. So there is a lot of kinesthetic processes, there's a lot of visual listening processes, visualization processes, which are not necessarily related to the screen. The screen just gives you a little bit of a trigger, but after that it is you, it is your mind, it is your theater. It is not the theater that is being played in front of you that is actually the process by which you actually move forward. But this requires a fair amount of, doing, to the extent that there are some pretty interesting comments that have been coming on the side. Unfortunately, quite a lot of them are there. So, in a rural place, like the tribal districts of Maharashtra, the Katha with Karadi was being recorded by WhatsApp by teachers and then being taken to the hamlets by some of these tribal teachers and gathering a set of children around them and then played on the mobile, because they don't have access to the mobile as well. So there is somebody else who's recording it and then taking it out there. And then you have children imitating this, coming from there. So you realize that whether it is, there is definitely a digital divide. Okay, I don't want to trivialize the fact that there are the haves and there are the have-nots when it comes to the digital world. And the bulk of our people are in the have-not segment. And these are, so we have also been doing a project called Last Mile Learning, where we are looking at innovating on how do I actually take many of these tools to that particular point and, make it happen there. Because some of the better schools are able to actually have, the schools where the parents have devices, where connectivity is there. These schools have taken the class and they are very happy about the way that the online classes are going here. So banning is not, is coming from a certain pain. I think we need to understand the fact that when we don't have solutions, we immediately, kind of take an extreme step and we say, ki kuch bhi mat karo. And now that is also a retrograde step, because simply a question of, let us say that I take the syllabus out of the equation. And I say that the teacher comes there, have conversations with the children. What is the news today? Let's just see, how to handle a certain conversation out there and leave it at that. Don't look for ki aaj maine ye kiya and this is the outcome of it. The moment you are very, very outcome driven in a 40-minute online session, you will make a mess of the whole thing. There will be lots of half information, misunderstandings that will actually come up. So I would say that the connection with learning, the connection with the teacher is something that we should try and preserve as much as we possibly can, and using whatever mode that there is. But the fatigue with online classes is increasing, and I think we know the reasons for that also. And we can fix it, but it will take a certain amount of time. And I think our teachers, the positive side of this is that many teachers who are very, very technology resistant have, actually become technology savvy. I'm not saying that everybody is in that space, but a lot of them have actually probably progressed by 2 years in a span of 1.5 months. So that is the positive thing that we should also, take away from this.
Very true. So, sir, coming to the theme of today's discussion in this webinar, would you have something which you can share as to how English classes can be taught effectively via online medium?
So here...
Before you answer, I would like to tell everybody that we have crossed 600. We are 617 participants now.
I think that's... I don't know why, but I hope that we justify your presence here.
I'm sure we will, sir. Yes, so coming back to the question, online classes in English, how can we make it effective?
Yeah, so since we had, talked about this earlier, I thought the best way to go about this was in 2 parts. And I am assisted by, supported by my colleague Preetika Venkatakrishnan, who's the Vice President of Product and Training at KARADI PATH Education Company. So what we will do is, for those of you, I actually want to see whether we can actually run a poll first, so that I know exactly what it is that, the participants here would be looking for. So let me see if I can activate. Okay, I am launching a poll for all of you. A poll will show up on your screen, and it is just a yes/no question. There are 2 questions, and you can just click yes or no, depending on what is applicable to you. And based on that, we will structure our the next part of our webinar.
Sure, sir.
We will give it 30 more seconds. I'm going to end the poll in 10 seconds. So if you have not yet done it, please do so now. I think most people have voted. 73% have voted. In the interest of time, I'm going to end the polling now.
So 75% of us have voted.
Yes. So this is an interesting, I am going to share the results for all of you also to take a see it. So you can see that 68% are offering online English classes for kindergarten or primary classes in their schools. That is a slightly higher number than I expected, which kind of points to the kind of schools that are also attending here, because these may be schools with the necessary infrastructure that may come from the mid and upper segments of that may be catering to the mid and upper segments of society.
Let me tell you here that we have participants from Middle East, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah,
Okay.
and we also have a couple of schools participating from Pakistan.
Okay. That's very interesting to know. I think that was the first was more for my information. And the second one was the majority of you have not attended a KARADI PATH workshop. So I can probably take it from the beginning. So for those of you who have attended, maybe some of this is familiar. So please bear with us. But since 72% have not attended, I think we will do justice to the majority there. And so I'm stopping the sharing of the results. So that was very interesting. And thank you again, everybody, for participating in the poll. To close this. So I will actually then in that case I will use a slide a presentation to kind of aid me along with the process of presenting it.
Sure, sir.
Are you able to see the screen, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Am I reasonably audible? There were one or two comments which were commenting that I'm not audible.
It must be bandwidth issue from their side, sir.
Okay.
To me, you are very clearly audible.
Okay. So let's start right away. Just give me a moment. I'm going to wait a moment. I'm going to disable participant annotation so that there is no annotation being done by anybody.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So yes, let's get started. I'm going to start with a question right at the beginning. Let me see. So here is a question for you. Just 1 minute. Let me erase this little annotation that came in here.
There are few of us who are asking this question, whether we are recording the session or whether it is available online after the webinar as well.
Yeah.
Again, tell you that we have these, this webinar being broadcasted live at KARADI PATH's YouTube channel and Facebook Live, and also Live EDUCARE's Facebook Live. And it will be there as a recording forever. You can always go there, watch, or even download and keep it for you. Please, sir.
So here is a question for all of you, and you can, give the answer in the comments. 44% of the mangoes in a basket are bad. So this is the statement or the data that you have. On the basis of this, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The first question is a 3rd standard question. The second question is also a 3rd standard question. The third question is a 7th standard question. So the first question is, what is the fraction of good mangoes? So can I have you all answer the question in your chat box?
Yep. So a lot of people are answering that.
Yes, I can see. I'm still waiting for the correct answer. So far, no correct answers. One correct answer has come up, and I think now a few more are getting it right. The correct answer is 14 by 25. So thank you very much for many of you for now. If you answer it, I'm not going to give you credit. So the correct answer is 14 by 25. What about the second question? What is the ratio of good mangoes to bad mangoes? We are getting some correct answers and we are getting a lot of wrong answers also. So in the interest of time, let me answer. It is 14:11. Let us go to the third question. If the actual number of good mangoes in the basket is 84, what is the total number of mangoes in the basket? Let's have the answer to this. I'm not going to say whether the answer is right or wrong. I'm still getting a lot of different answers here. Mm-hmm. We'll stop here and let me tell you the answer for the first question was 14 by 25. The answer to the second question is 14:11. Quite a few of you got that right. If the actual number of good mangoes in the basket is 84, what is the total number of mangoes in the basket? The answer is 150. There were a lot of right answers there also. But what is interesting, and what is kind of the experience from various interactions that we have had with this set of questions, is that a majority of participants do not even get started on answering the question. They wait for somebody else to start. And probably the reason for this is that they are unsure or do not know how to go about even attacking the problem to begin with. And typically when we take this question, and I think many of you can try this in your schools as well. If you take this question to the 9th standard in your students in your school, you will find that probably about 15 to 20% of the children will get it right. 80% of the students will not get it right, and this is my experience across several schools. And we have to ask the question as to why is a 3rd standard question so difficult, or why is a 7th standard question so difficult, and why is it that, or many of us actually in this room and in this particular session here, struggle to even get started with answering the question itself. And the answer for that is actually quite simple. Is that when we did these sums, when in school, they were all separate chapters. Percentage was one chapter, fraction was another chapter, ratio was the 3rd chapter. We never really understood it at a conceptual level and figured out that all of them are one and the same thing. It is just different ways of expressing the same idea. But for different applications, the concept of percentage is useful for certain applications, the concept of fraction is useful for certain applications, and the concept of ratio is useful for certain applications. When it came to the 3rd question, there was a question of inverse proportion, direct proportion. How do I attack this problem? When we were in school, we were given the formula. We applied the formula. We got the answer right. We passed our exams. But we never really understood why the formula was whatever it was. So in this sense, basically what happened is that we knew how to do the operation, but we did not really understand the concepts very well. And this is where the question of language deficit actually comes in. And I want to take this forward to I'm going to skip some of these things and go directly so that we have more time. I'm going to go to a much simpler question. Now, you don't have to answer this question, please. I can already see some people typing answers to this question. Obviously, I expect all of you to answer this question correctly. So Ramu has 23 mangoes. Rani has 12 mangoes. How many mangoes do they have in all? I think the answer to that is very clear. The answer is 35. But when we look at a typical, let us say, first standard student, in the second semester or the third term, the student is introduced to these word problems in addition. You will find that if in your school, let's say 70% of your children got the numeric problem right, less than 25% got the word problem right. And I think this would be a common experience for most of you. And we have to ask the question, what were the things that changed when I went from the numeric problem to the word problem? Obviously, you have the question of, can I read the problem? Once I read the problem, the next question comes, can I understand the problem? And then once I have understood the problem, do I know how to do the operation? This is how we would break this up. But there's something that is a little bit more complex than this that is actually happening, which is that when you look at the first statement, Ramu has 23 mangoes, this is something that you can visualize and imagine. So I can convert that text into a visual in my head. When I look at Rani, when I see the statement Rani has 12 mangoes, once again, I can visualize that statement. I can see a Rani in my head holding 12 mangoes, maybe in her hand, maybe in a basket, maybe in a bag. And then we ask the question, how many mangoes do they have in all? And when I typically ask this question, can you visualize this? Most people will say yes. But the fact of the matter is, when you say yes to that answer, you're actually visualizing the answer to the question and not the question itself. The question actually lies in a very different layer of comprehension, which is far beyond that first standard child's ability. In fact, many of the concepts, when we teach them, they are abstract in nature. So when I can visualize something that is tangible, when I cannot visualize something that is intangible. So you can visualize Ramu and Rani together have 35 mangoes, but you may not be able to visualize how many mangoes do they have in all, because that is a question that is very intangible at this point in time. And once again, the phrase in all is actually a very complex phrase. Right? We don't understand, we don't recognize the fact that this is something that we cannot there's no way a first standard or a second standard child can even understand this in the way that we prepare them to this point, that the maths teacher will say, agar in all dikhe to aap total karo, in all or total, you do addition. If you see left or remaining, you do subtraction. If you see times or whatever, you do multiplication. In this manner, the teacher actually allows the children to do this. And so those 25 or 30 or 40% of the children who did this word problem successfully, you think they have understood the question and they have answered the question. The reality is very, very different. That's not really what is actually happening here. Most of them have not understood the question at all. At this point, I'm just going to pause a little bit and take try and look at the. There are lots of chats, that are coming up here. So let me just see whether there's anything interesting that I want to. Why my chat box is not opening? Okay, it's open.
I'm also looking at the chat box. Those are just reaffirmations of what you're saying.
They are reaffirmations of what I'm saying. So anyway, thank you. So keep that coming, because it allows me to actually, keep resonating with you, because in this model, once again, as you see, when we have 500 people, my ability to interact is very limited, because that will just lead to another kind of chaos. So we will move on from here, and we will look at, what are the other things that we need to, focus on. I would just like you to look at these slides. I'm not going to speak too much about it, because these are things that you know to a reasonable extent. And this is just kind of accentuating the fact that a lot of the learning that actually happens in a school does not really, is not understood by us. So when a student actually goes into an engineering college, they do a lot of study, but what percentage of it actually have they understood at a conceptual level? It's unfortunately very sad that it is not very much. So then we have to look at, what are the underlying reasons for this? And we have to, when the moment we think about English, the moment we think about language teaching, and assuming that there are many language teachers here, we have to ask ourselves the question, what are we teaching? Are we teaching English as a subject? Are we teaching English as a skill? What is our responsibility? What is our function? And once again, many teachers would say, or many schools would say, that my children speak English. My children are able to read English, etc., etc. But once again, we have to see, is this at a functional level or is it at an academic level? This is a huge gap that we have. Unfortunately, this is not something that is being talked about a lot, because even NCERT does not talk about it adequately. If I have to understand the idea of LCM when I'm being taught, now you just imagine, when you learned LCM, did you really know what the heck you were doing out there? You did some calculations and you came up with a set of numbers. You just did the operation without really understanding why LCM, what is LCM supposed to do, and what does this idea of LCM actually mean? Yes or no?
Very right, sir.
So now we never really think about the fact that whether it is science, whether it is geography, whether it is history, whether it is mathematics, academic literacy is a very important part of the process of learning. Without academic literacy, my learning is always going to be incomplete. So when we go back to that, engineering student who, after 4 years of studying in an engineering college, actually took some very difficult exams and passed. It is not as if it's easy to pass an engineering exam. So there was an exam. The student actually put the effort in and passed, and then goes into an interview. And I am in, my background has been engineering. So I will, always refer to a lot of physics and maths and engineering in my conversations about language. When, the student comes in front and say, let's say I'm an engineering company, and I say, just tell me what is the first law of thermodynamics. And the student will answer by giving you the definition of thermodynamics. And then you try to probe and say, exactly what does that mean? And you will immediately find the entire thing crumbling, because this student knows the definition. This student knows to do sums based on thermodynamics. This student can do experiments based on thermodynamics, but this student does not understand the concept of thermodynamics. And if you don't have that conceptual understanding, your ability to now translate all the things that you have done into something that is application oriented becomes extremely limited. So this is a tragedy that we really have to empathize with, because here is a student who is working very hard, who's gone through all kinds of processes in the first, let us say, 14 years of schooling and then 4 years of college. And at the end of the day, you say that you do have an engineering certificate, but then you're not fit to be an engineer. I mean, that's a truly cruel joke, yes or no? So that is something that I think has not been understood adequately by the idea of why am I teaching English? If English is my medium of instruction, what should be my faculty in terms of comprehension? What should be my faculty in terms of reading? What should be my faculty in terms of writing? What should be my faculty? What should be the proficiency in terms of my speaking? These are things that we have actually not even. So when you take a 4th standard English textbook, for example, and if you take a 4th standard science textbook, which textbook has more complex English? You can comment and you can answer this question for me. I'll hold on a little bit and see your answers.
So to me, I think science would be more complex, because there could be certain jargons which I may not be able to understand. I do not know. I could be wrong.
So the majority is saying science, and you also said science. But I want to correct you on one big misunderstanding.
Sir.
The jargon I will remember, because that's a memorization issue.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say least common multiple, every child knows least common multiple. But the question is one of, when I have the description of what is least common multiple, unless I can unravel that, knowing the jargon is of no use. So the reason why you find jargon or terminology as difficult is because it is the description of the terminology that you're not able to understand. It is not the question that the moment you understand the description of it, you will find the jargon very easy. So the problem is not with the terminology. The problem is not with the jargon. The problem is that when you articulate the idea of any of these ideas, of any of these concepts, you realize that the comprehension is simply not there. Your ability to comprehend is simply not there. So English, so the science textbook actually requires a comprehension level that is 3 or 4 grades above what the English textbook requires. The English textbook focuses substantially on the tangible. The science textbook has to go into the intangible. So you introduce a value, you talk about irrational fractions. You talk about ideas that are beyond my capacity to imagine. I can't visualize an irrational number. I can't imagine what is 3.141517. I can't imagine the value of pi. So when I cannot imagine it, this is what is called abstract level comprehension. And it is the abstract level comprehension which is of a substantially higher order than what I call the tangible element of comprehension. But you have to build that abstract level from the tangible. So you can't jump into the abstract. So I can't ask you a question, how many mangoes do they have in all? Because in that how many mangoes do they have in all, I'm asking you to abstract something which you still are not prepared to yet. So how do you now segue from the tangible into the intangible or the abstract is really the process that our curriculum does not even define it. Our curriculum does not even recognize it as a big problem. Some of us got lucky because when I went to school, I had a home environment that spoke English. My teachers spoke good English around me. My maths teacher spoke good English. So as a result of that, what you realize is that everything other than the textbook is actually working in my favor. It is, yes, I'm seeing a comment, same is true with social science textbook. Yes, I told you, whether it's geography, whether it is civics, whether it is history. Once again, these are not, if I'm recognizing, if I'm saying that, who introduced currency in India in history? Why did he introduce currency from gold and silver as the common currency? How did we transition to, let us say, any kind of a denominated currency that I said, this is worth 10 rupees. Why do you transition to it? Now, the moment you try to explain it in language, the child can't follow it because this is at an abstract level. So this is something that we need to look at as to how do I segue from the English textbook? Can the English textbook actually take me there? Or is the English textbook or my curriculum inadequate? I am not going to answer that question. You will discover that the answer to the question as we move forward. Yes, all of you are saying, please tell us how. We are going to address the how also. So until and unless you focus on comprehension as the most important language element that needs to be delivered, not reading, not writing, not speaking, but comprehension as the most important element in language learning, you will not be able to move from comprehension to conceptual understanding. And if you don't have conceptual understanding, obviously, creative and critical thinking, you can keep on talking about it, but you will not achieve the kind of goals that we, at a minimum, need to achieve in those spaces. So I'm going to quickly take you through some exercises in terms of comprehension. And I'm not going to spend too much time because I do want to answer the questions that you have raised out there. So let's look at some quick examples. And because of the number of participants, I'm not able to do this as an interactive exercise, but you'll be able to do it on your own. And maybe, Dhiren, you can participate in the conversation here a little bit.
Sure, sir, I'll try to, but my intelligence will be exposed today.
Yeah. I'll try not to embarrass you too much.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
So here is a set of words. Do you understand the meaning? Are all these words familiar to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes.
So if I give you a sentence made up of these words, logically you should say that I should be able to understand the sentence. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
known relation between...
Embarrassment number 1.
Okay.
For Dr. Dhirendra Mishra.
If the known relation between the variables consists of a table of... The known relation between the variables consists of a table of corresponding values. The graph consists only of the set of variable points. If the variables are known to vary continuously, one often draws a curve to show the variation. I can comprehend but can't express.
No, but you should be, if you comprehend bits and pieces of it.
Yes. Maybe 60%, sir.
Yeah. So basically, you are able to look at the parts, but until you are able to look at the whole, you can't say it is comprehension.
Yes.
Because I am able to, for example, you are able to visualize the fact that this is a set of points. There is an x-axis, y-axis. You will probably plot the points with this, and then you are saying that okay, I draw a curve to join them all. But you have lost the critical element here, which is that the variables are varying continuously. If the variables did not vary continuously, you will get a straight line. If the variables vary continuously, you will get a curve. You cannot join them without using a curve. So the fundamental element in this you actually would have missed.
Yes.
You would have understood lots of parts of this particular sentence, but the most core element that was supposed to be. So this is pretty much the definition of a curve. But what I would do is I would typically memorize the definition, not necessarily understand. Let's move forward.
Last ceremony, I went to the Viswanath, where I met Prerna, who took me to the Bantale. There was much rumching and sunching, fright and eyes tattooed. Now, I do not know a lot of words out of these words.
Let me ask you a few questions, and you can answer those questions. Okay? When did this incident happen?
Now, last ceremony, that must be some season or something, or some time.
You can just answer using the same word. So it happened last ceremony.
Last ceremony, yeah.
Okay. Where did you go?
Bufakun.
Who did you meet there?
Krena.
Where did the Krena take you?
Bantale.
What happened in the Bantale?
Sorry?
What happened in the Bantale?
Some rumching and sunching.
Yeah. Frightened, what did you do to the Bufakun?
I tattooed.
And then what did you do?
And then I yenid.
Yenid home. Yeah.
Yenid.
Now, you saw one statement full of words that you knew the meaning of, which stumped you. And here you are able to answer questions with a paragraph that is full of words that you don't know the meaning of. Yes or no?
Yes.
So the idea of comprehension is not related to vocabulary specifically. The idea of comprehension is related substantially more to context than to meaning. So when you see last, you immediately know that Sereni is a point in time. When you see went, you immediately know that Bafakun is a place. See how much information you were able to derive without anybody talking to you or without anybody explaining things. When we look at our own language learning process, you will realize that, when teachers talk about teaching vocabulary and, word sets, and we talk about the dictionary, you will realize that totally in your entire schooling process, you probably were not taught more than 500 words. But today you probably know the meaning of 8,000 to 10,000 words, which you have all discovered on your own through this process.
Yes.
So the moment you teach meaning, you actually impair comprehension. This is a very important statement that I make. That you should never be taught meanings of words. You must derive the meanings of the words from the context. This is how we learn our mother tongue. We don't learn our mother tongue by people teaching you the meanings of words one by one. Maybe in the beginning you said ball, food, spoon, dish. But after that, you just kept on talking to the child, and the child pretty much figured out the meanings on the basis of the fact that, so when, I don't know how many of you are able to see me, or whether the slide is dominating, but if you can see me, let me say, suppose you're feeding a child and you say, look at this tasty food, it is coming like an aeroplane from here, open your mouth, open your mouth, open your mouth, How much language has actually been communicated in that process, you do not understand.
Yes.
You never explained the meaning of the word, but the child has an idea about aeroplane, has an idea about mouth, has an idea about opening, has an idea about the spoon, has an idea about food. So many things the child has actually derived in that process. It is not a complete derivation, but as you keep on doing this, what you realize is that this fantastic achievement of learning a language emerges. It doesn't emerge by teaching ABCD. It doesn't emerge by teaching meanings of words. It doesn't emerge from word lists. It doesn't emerge from what are synonyms, antonyms. It actually emerges simply from very, very robust communication, and communication where the context is very well established. So this is another element that I want you to think about. Moving forward, here is a word.
Cut.
What is the meaning of this, Dhiren?
Cut.
You can't just repeat the word. Or are you showing me something?
Yeah, I was trying to show you that I'm trying to cut something.
Yeah.
That means
now let me tell you something very interesting. Okay. When I ask this question to English teachers, the English teachers will invariably give me separate, break. They will come up with a series of synonyms for cut.
Yes.
Because you are not an English teacher, you took the common sense route. They will take the academic route to it. Actually, the common sense route is the only one that works, because every cut is the simplest word that you can do to describe this. Every other word is more complex than cut. So you cannot explain cut via another set of words. You can only explain cut by demonstration. And so there are these whole set of words that should never be explained. That should only be shown. But then the other thing about any language is the fact that the meaning of a word does not remain static. It's a very, very dynamic idea. And most words, keep changing in terms of meaning. So let's look at a few examples here. Cut the apple is the way that you gave the meaning.
Mm-hmm.
The cut is hurting me is related, but is a completely different
It's a wound.
meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. You wanted to say something?
I said it's a wound. Here the
Yes.
cut is the wound. Yeah.
What is my cut in this deal? Very different.
Yes.
You did not make the cut. Very different. What a fantastic square cut. Completely different. She is a cut about the rest. Very different. I am just not cut out for cricket. He's cut up with me. Cut it out. Just look at, did you imagine that cut had 9 meanings? And this is not all the meanings of cut. There are more meanings to cut that you will discover. And in this way, whether you take a run, whether you take up, or whether you take down, there are so many different meanings to the simplest of words, that if we teach the meaning of the word, I impair the possibility that you will discover the 8 other meanings of cut. But how did you know all these meanings of cut? Because you know the meanings, each of the meanings in these sentences, correct?
Yes.
You discovered it through context, you discovered it through experience. You did not discover it because somebody told and explained each of these sentences to you. You pretty much derived these meanings.
Yes, sir.
So to understand the power of derivative learning is something that I wanted to understand. With language especially, derivative learning is probably 1,000 times more effective than instructed learning.
Yes. And I also
The less you instruct, the more effective you'll be. Yeah, go ahead.
And I also know that you're speaking cut to cut.
Yes. So I think you will discover many more meanings. I had only place for so many meanings on my slide.
True.
So, but I hope you get the idea that how meaning actually can impair the process of actually language learning in a very substantial manner, and why focusing on the word is actually counterproductive to language learning. You really need to focus on communication and not on the word or the meaning. You basically have to keep on talking, and the more that you communicate with context, in context, you will find language really flowering. And we will talk about, I will go very quickly now because I want to, Pritika will actually be able to share, how this actually evolves in the classroom, and that will be a little bit more on the KARADI path process itself. So here is an interesting little sentence, once again in the context, is that this sentence has so many meanings depending on how you say it. So what is the role of the speaking in comprehension? So I can say, I did not say she stole the money. 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 So did you see how many meanings came through that?
Yes, sir.
And each meaning was completely different from the previous meaning. Same set of sentences. So the understanding of how language works and how do I prepare my child to be able to figure out all of these complexities. It is not complex, okay? First of all, I want you to stop thinking that this is a very difficult thing just because you had difficulty. You grew into difficulty. As a child, you did it extremely simply. Because when you learned your mother tongue, nobody really focused on teaching. People simply focused on communicating. I have an idea. I have a 1-year-old in front of me. I want my idea to enter his or her head. That was my only goal. I did not think about, is he going to learn the language? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? My goal was, I was very enthusiastic to communicate with the child, and I did it in the best possible way with lots of non-verbal stimuli. I did not communicate without non-verbal stimuli. So my eyes would go, my hands would move, I would use objects, my voice would move up and down. So I used a lot of tools of non-verbal communication while I was communicating. And that is what eventually resulted in this magical phenomenon of a child actually learning what neuroscience considers one of the most complicated learning processes, which is the learning of the mother tongue. Neuroscience has, any good neuroscientist will say, we do not know how this phenomenon happens. In fact, we haven't even unraveled how 5% of this phenomenon happens. We know where it happens. We have no idea how it happens. So this is something that I want all of us to understand, that this is extraordinarily easy at one level, but extraordinarily complex to break down and say that through the broken down pieces, I'm going to construct this.
Sir, I have an out of context question here.
Yeah.
Now, these days we see that, a lot of marriages are happening between, two individuals from two different states, speaking many languages.
Yeah.
So in the early years, what do you suggest? Should we introduce only one language to the child, 2 languages to the child, or what is your take on it? More than 2-3 languages?
So I have a personal experience. So let me give that. 2 personal experiences, okay? And one experience as a child. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Mumbai. Mm-hmm. My mother tongue is Tamil. My native place is Kerala. Mm-hmm. So I learned Hindi, Marathi, Tamil, and Malayalam. Okay. My parents spoke English, so I learned English. By the time that I was 4 or 5, I was proficient in these 5 languages at a functional level. So the question of multiple, and let me give you one more quick follow-up to that. I learned French for 5 years in a very good school, very good teachers. I am the Maharashtra state topper for French. I can't speak 5 sentences of French. So one was inside the classroom, the other 5 were outside the classroom. Whatever was inside the classroom with no ecosystem support, my exam scores were 100, 99 on 100 was my exam score, but my knowledge of the language was close to 0. Whereas when I learned it from the environment, I learned all 5 languages without even knowing that I'm learning. So, and a child in Dharavi, which is actually one of the inspirations for the KARADI PATH model itself, speaks on average 3 languages, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, because of the ecosystem that is there. Most Mumbaikars, if there are Mumbaikars in this place, they will attest to the fact that speak a minimum of 3 languages. And none of this was complicated. Only when you kind of try to break it down does it seem complicated. We do a lot of very complex things intuitively. We don't learn it logically. So the moment you start thinking logically, you will find it complex. But if you just allow it to happen by creating a space and allow the learning to happen the way, the brain is a powerful, powerful instrument. And so it will do what it needs to do. You create just the ecosystem. Do not start teaching the way the syllabus teaches. In fact, in the schools, there are some schools that have been using KARADI PATH for 4 or 5 years, which have abandoned the process of conventional teaching entirely because they find that this moves so much faster and so much deeper, so to the extent that I can have a 2nd standard child who can read a 5th standard English textbook effortlessly and understand it and talk about it. This is not a phenomenon. This is not a miracle. This is something that every child is capable. It is the pedagogy that is the problem. It is the process of teaching that is the problem, not the capacity of the child. The child is capable of learning 4, 5, 6, 7 languages. There are probably people in this room who may be, let us say, bank officers, wives or armed forces wives, and I've met many of them who would say that I know 6 or 7 or 8 languages simply because they learned it they had the opportunity to move from Assam to Punjab to Karnataka to Orissa, and in each of these places over a period of 2 or 3 years, they picked up a new language. So language learning, simultaneous acquisition of multiple languages, not a problem at all. This confusion or this concern is only in the logical thinking adult. This is not a problem for the child. It is our problem, not the child's problem.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to skip now pretty much everything. I'm only going to talk about this one little sentence, Newton's first law of motion. An object remains in its state of rest or of uniform motion unless acted upon by an external force. When we studied this definition, we memorized this definition.
Yes.
Nobody taught us to comprehend this line. We knew Newton's first law of motion conceptually, not from this statement, but from demonstration. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So this sentence basically is easily comprehensible also by a second standard child if I take them through a comprehension-driven process of language acquisition. So now in a comprehension-driven process, you are trained to convert words into both tangible forms as well as intangible forms, not as words or letters or any of the components of it. You think about it as a whole. So in a sentence like this, I must be able to read that sentence and I must be able to do what is called non-linear processing. What is non-linear processing is that I need to take parts of this and create one picture. So in this statement of Newton's first law, there are 6 pictures that I need to be able to imagine. 1, an object at rest. 2, a force that is being applied to it. 3, the object moving. 4, an object that is moving. 5, somebody stopping it. And 3rd and 6th, the object coming to a state of rest. So this little sentence actually describes 6 different pictures. And unless you are trained to do nonlinear processing, you will only be memorizing the sentence. You will never be understanding the sentence. You can train each and every student. Every child can actually process comprehension of Newton's first law of motion if taken through the right mode. I'm going to do one more slide and I'm going to hand this over to I'm going to do a little exercise with all of you. I would like all of you to please close your eyes. There is nothing to see on the slide. I am going to read something out to you and I want you to visualize it. I want you to visualize it with as much detail as possible.
Sure, sir.
Can I start?
Yes, sir. My eyes are closed and I'm sure everybody is too.
Close your eyes. Imagine the power goes out. All the lights go out together and the heavy darkness envelops you. There is a sharp quietness in the air and you blink as your eyes adjust to the sudden dark. Your parents call out to you from another room. You get up and begin to walk slowly, taking small, careful steps. Your arms are outstretched and you maneuver your way by feeling the walls. You stumble a little over a small piece of furniture. You are finally in the living room where your family has assembled. You hear a sharp crack and a small glow fills the room. Your mother has lit a candle. You can all open your eyes. So we did a very, very simple exercise, right? You were able to follow the whole visualization process. But as you read this, you will probably see the quality of writing that has to go such that I make your visual super rich. I not only make your visual rich, I also make the vocabulary very rich. And here I'm using so many idiomatic usages of words, phrases, etc., that this is not something that you would expect that, can I do this with the kindergarten class? Of course you can. Is the student in kindergarten going to be able to do this? Yes, the child can. The child may not understand everything that you're saying here, but the child is very excited to go through this experience of imagination and visualization. The child would much later understand the idea of what is heavy darkness, what is a sharp quietness, and then this whole idea of vocabulary like maneuver your way. The children actually figure out what the meaning could be. They guess the meaning. An English teacher would say, how can I use this word with a first standard child or a second standard child? By all means, the richest of language can be used with children. And the richer your language, the idea should be something that the child can visualize. That is important. The language should be as rich as you possibly can make it. And then you will find how quickly the child moves up in terms of all aspects of language proficiency. I'm going to just show you one more slide that I'm just going to read out. We won't do the exercise. Once again, for the descriptive nature of this. Close your eyes. Imagine a glowing candle in front of you. The candle is tall and sits atop an ancient brass candle holder. The wick of the candle is ablaze with a long quivering flame that dances playfully. You peer at the teardrop-shaped flame, enchanted by the shades of color. The tip of the flame is light yellow, shedding a golden glow around it. The middle of the flame is bright orange, the color of the sky, lit by a setting sun. The wick is burned black at the bottom, surrounded by a dazzling blue radiance. The heat of the flame melts the candle gradually, causing the molten wax to trickle down the sides. You stare at the soothing flame for a long time and slowly fall asleep. I shall leave you to marvel at how something like a flame can be so expressively expressed. I'm going to hand the screen over to Pritika. Pritika, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So, once again, for those who joined late, Pritika is our head of product and training, and she will, introduce KARADI Path the way it actually unravels in the classroom, and that will answer the many questions about some of the ideas that we have that I have introduced, and how this can actually become a classroom model, and specifically how in the online model this can actually become a game changer. So over to you, Pritika.
Thank you, Vish. I hope you've made me a co-host so that I can share. Good afternoon to everyone. I think it was quite a delight to...
Good afternoon, ma'am. On behalf of everybody, I welcome you, and it's a privilege for us to have you also in this forum to, enlighten us. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much, sir. And I've heard a lot about you from Viswanath, sir. So wonderful meeting you, and lovely to have about 500 people who are still with us. I was completely engrossed, and I didn't want to try answering any of the math questions and all the science questions. So I just, had my video switched off for that. So let me, what I will do is I'll take about 10 to 15 minutes and take you through how an online class can be run, how an online English class, can be actually implemented. And I'll show you what we know best, which is our KARADI Path online digital interface itself. I'll try and do this in 15 minutes so that you and Viswanath sir have time to, take on some questions after that. Just give me a minute. I'll be sharing my screen now. So we have this very interesting digital interface in KARADI PATH, which is being used by our schools. I hope you can see the Power English page here. I hope this is visible. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll have to just share the sounds which I hadn't done. Just give me a minute and I will also add the computer sounds. Yeah. So this is something that, while the digital interface itself has been developed over several years, much of the content here again, dates back to, I would say, 25 years, 10 years, and many, many years. So while this has come in handy during COVID innovation, the way we have designed our audiovisual resources relies a lot on methodical analysis, research, and a lot of time that has been spent with theatre actors, voice actors, and so on. I'm going to request you all not to annotate on the screen, and I will also sort of hide the annotations now. I'm just going to clear it. We will keep an open screen at the end, maybe, if there is time for us all to doodle and scribble. This is what we do in class. I do understand when somebody talks, it's nice to keep doodling, ask you to use your notepads for it and not the screen. So for those of you who do not know what we do in KARADI PATH, we try and create an English ecosystem for the child. We believe, like sir was mentioning, if a child has to pick up the language, they have to grow up in this very beautiful language ecosystem rather than use textbooks or workbooks, or like sir was mentioning, have PPTs and YouTube videos being played. Towards this, we have 4 distinct modules, which is action, music, reading, and story. I will take you through all these modules and how these modules pan out in an online classroom. So we give each of our teachers a software, a digital interface as we call it, that can be installed in the teacher's in the teacher's computer, in her laptop. We also give the teacher an app, a mobile app. We give the students a mobile app to reinforce listening and reading that they do in the classroom. I'm going to take you through the classroom interface now. So the teacher has just about everything here. Just a second. So if I were to, look at the digital interface itself, the teacher does a set of, activities, beautifully curated activities that go into creating a language ecosystem for the child. We typically start our class with what is called as focus. You all experienced the focus that Viswanath sir just did. So focus is where we ask all our children to turn on their videos but mute their speakers and close their eyes and imagine. So this is a module where we let imagination unfurl for the child. And the digital interface has ready-made focus activities.
Close your eyes. Imagine you are on a deserted island. You are walking along a stretch of beach, strewn with pebbles, shells, seaweed, and driftwood. You can hear the gentle lapping of waves and the distant shrieks of seagulls.
I will just stop it here because you've already experienced a focus. So we start the class with meditation, and our digital interface, the way it is designed, does not allow for screen time for more than 5 minutes. There's a lot that we do. The screen is only for the instructions. It is for the modeling that happens, but there's a lot of action that takes place. So our first module after this 1 minute of meditation on language is called as action module. This module is used to build the syntax of the child, and we know that most children who make errors in English, or even most adults, make these errors in the language structure, in the sentence structure itself, and not really in the vocabulary always. So here we make the children learn the syntax by doing a set of actions. our digital interface works because the teacher doesn't have to worry about camera distance. She need not have to order an Amazon, stand, a camera stand. And these are things that are not very easily possible for a teacher in an online class, because if I have to move about and do a class, then I need to place the camera at a certain distance, or the angling has to be right, the lighting has to be right. So we have a theater actor, or rather a group of theater actors who performed all the classes for us for the digital interface. So here we go with actions. So what the teacher has to do is tell children to turn on their videos, stand up, look at the video, and perform the actions. So here we go.
Now we are going to do action commands new. Listen to me, look at me, do as I do, but do not say the commands. Put your thumbs up. Put your thumbs down. Walk fast. Walk faster. Stop and punch the air. Walk slow. Walk slower. Stop and kick the air.
So I'm going to, in the interest of time, stop it there. But what we do is we cover everything from sensory expressions to prepositions to adverbs to even, grammatical person and tenses without even naming any of these grammatical terms. It's just language. We use body and space and movement to make the child acquire that very essential part of language, which is syntax. After this, we have the next module called as the music module, where we introduce the children to Karadi rhymes. Now, Karadi rhymes has followers all around the world, so I guess some of you already know about Karadi rhymes. We are actually all set for the release of Karadi rhymes 3 in July. So Karadi rhymes is music that is redefined, music that is meant for Indian children everywhere. It is something that sort of debunks, conventional rhymes that we have, by which all that we mean is it is very contextual. A child here listens to songs not about a bridge having fallen or a little boy having broken his crown, but about mangoes and bel puri and going to the beach. Okay, I'm going to request you all not to be the kid in class and not annotate. I'll have to go and actually disable annotation for you now, I think. But until then, just a second. I'll have to go back and 1 second. Let me clear all and close it. Great. I think this should help. It didn't get cleared, but that's all right. This gives the feel of a real classroom to me. So that's good. If I had a 5-year-old here, they would have done it. Oh God, I have another 6-year-old. And oh good.
Teachers, participants, I request everybody, please do not play with your screen. Maybe unknowingly you are doing this, but please do not do that. Just listen to us. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, sir. What we do is we set the songs in context. So we have songs about bel puri, we have songs about mangoes, going to the beach, sights and sounds that an Indian child is familiar with. We believe, before you learn about the daffodils, you need to learn about parijat and jasmine and the flowers, dahlias and the flowers that you see around in India. So these are contextual songs, that are created with fabulous music and with a very scientific and mathematical, rationale behind it. They've been set to tune by 3 brothers and a violin, which is Mr. Viswanath and his 2 brothers, all 3 of them great musicians, like you had introduced at the beginning, and sung by the one and only Usha Vidhya. So I'm going to just play this for you now. I'm just going to go to session. Just give me a second. So I'll just show you what we do here in this session. So we would typically ask the children to mute themselves but come onto the video and listen to the rhyme.
Sing the sunflowers, ring out the red roses, giggle the gulmohars, mama the marigolds. Sing the sunflowers, ring out the red roses, giggle the gulmohars.
The rest of it, you have to buy the song and listen to the rest of the song. But I'm doing this just in the interest of time. They get to listen to this beautiful song where instead of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, you're going to do sa, re, ga, ma. And then what is very interesting in the digital interface is the teacher has this teaching assistant with her, like they do in the West. You have a theater actor right next to her. All that she needs to tell the child is, let us all watch the demo together and do the actions. She needs to now only watch the demo along with the children.
Sa, sing the sunflowers. Re, ring out the red roses. Ga, giggle the gulmohars. Ma, murmur the marigolds. Pa, pop the pretty poppies. Da, dance the dahlias. Ni, nod the neem flowers. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa.
If you actually look at it, the child wasn't glued to the screen at all. The child is doing a lot. In fact, there are actions where the child is asked to stomp out of the room. And we have parents, asking the teachers, what is happening with this class? I don't see my child glued to the screen. The child is walking out in a huff and an anger and all that. And then the school needs to just tell the parent there's a lot of theater happening as part of the online class. I'm just going to, so there's a lot more here. She can do the activities here. I'm not getting into that now. I'll take you to two of our other modules. So our classes are a mix of action, music, reading and story. I'll take you to a reading module and and a story also. So reading module is where the children listen to the words and repeat after words, families and so on, collocation, connotation, all of that is looked into.
Boy.
The child has to repeat. Turn on the
Boy.
Audio now and repeat.
Boy.
So, and then the teacher can also, ask them to check if the child is able to read out the word. Typically, the teacher would know the children in her class. So she can say, hey, Zaya, read the first word here, Rohan read the second word, and then somebody else reads devoured and library and sent. And before they move on to the story, that would, have these words in it. So this is like, giving the child, so there are two things we do with reading. For lower classes, we start with phonetics, but spend a lot of time in reading by sight. And reading is done both to create familiarity with the story, to have pockets of familiarity when you introduce language, or a set of words, and then take a child to a story, then very obviously the story looks very familiar. Like if I see a word like, devoured, it's very non-threatening to me when I get into a story. Then once they're done with the story, what we do is we help the children use the language in the story in other contexts. I'm just going to give you a sneak peek into the story. The children are taken through what is called a sentence highlighted listening, or a sound word kind of synthesis that happens here, which is very important for reading. So these are read-along, stories that we introduce the children to. In fact, in our digital interface, we take the child through 3 stages. One is read to me, where the child listens to the audio, is not able to read already, but plays around with the pictures, tries to understand what the illustrations tell them. And then we take them to a stage called read along, where they listen to a voice, a narrative voice, typically the voice of Karadi the bear, the storytelling bear, and then they follow along. Later we move them on to independent reading, where the child just picks up the book and reads. So I'll just show you the digital interface for the read along bit, where I read along with the audio. You into the story for lack of time.
Would you like to know why? Isha Sai was a boy of 10, and he had a magnificent nose. It was a nose that many people would say had character. It was also a nose that people rarely ever saw, because it was always buried in some book or the other.
To go back, now they get to listen to this 16 to 20 minute story, which is a very powerful experience for the child and the most important moment of immersion itself. Followed by this, what we do in the class is, we do miming, we do conversation. That entire digital interface is built to make peer learning possible, to use body, to make body movements and use of space possible. That is something that typically does not happen in a digital classroom. I can just show you a minute of mime and a minute of conversation and wrap up with that. So they get to watch a theatre actor mime a small snippet from the story called Bookworm, which is about a little boy who devours books like some people devour food. So this little boy is a bookworm in this story. So here's a bit where this little boy is asked to draw a group of tigers by the teachers. And the teacher asks the class, who do you call a group of tigers? And nobody in the class knows the answer. But this little boy, who is typically introverted, seen as an outcast in the class because he's introverted, actually comes up with the answer. I'm not going to tell you what a group of tigers is called. Please find out or comment if you already know. And let's watch the demo.
Sesha picked up the chalk and walked up to the blackboard. He drew 2 lines, and then 2 more, and 2 more. And before you knew it, a tiger emerged with a tail and long, majestic stripes on his body. The class watched in amazement as Sesha's hands flew quickly and deftly over the blackboard. Beautiful white strokes filled the board. He drew another tiger right next to the first one, and another one, and another one. And soon there were 6 magnificent striped tigers on the board. It looked as though they would start roaring any second. The class broke out into a thunderous applause.
So we need to imagine the class doing all of this. It feels like an online class, But at home, sitting in front of the monitor or with a mobile phone on a stand, this is what the class would be doing. There's a lot of theater, lots of music, there's a lot of aesthetics, just miming and so on that we have. We also have a lot of peer group interaction, wherein we play conversations based on the story for a child, and also just a second, we have to just I'll just play this for you.
Barney, how are you going to spend your weekend?
I am going to spend all of Saturday at the library.
You must be very excited.
Yes,
So
I
what we do
am.
is we play the conversation and the child gets to listen to it in class. And then during the online class, the teacher can also mute the conversation after they have listened to it once, after the students have listened to it once, and she can ask children to take on roles and read. So it would actually be a child reading it this time. That's great, Vani. I've never been to a library. And then you could have another child say, that's a pity, Rekha. Would you like to go to the library with me on Saturday? I'm going to just pause it here. And so this is just a sneak peek into our digital classroom. So over to Dr. Dhirendra sir and Viswanath sir. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Kritika.
Thank you.
Dhiren, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Kritika ma'am. And so teachers, this is an interesting way to find out that we can always use multimedia in our online classes. And these multimedia, videos and rhymes and all are going to help you in enriching the children better than rather, where you only read the textbook and explain them the meanings. These are very beautiful tools. Somebody who had asked this question, where can we see these videos? So let me tell you, Karadi Tales, on behalf of Karadi Path, I would like to tell all of you that Karadi Tales and Karadi Path, it's a product wherein schools subscribe to it. And there are a lot of schools, over 4,000 schools all over the country, who use this to enrich language improvement in the kids. So you might have to subscribe to it to get these videos, but a lot of stuff I've seen is available online on the YouTube channel as well. Right, sir?
Yeah, so there is a lot of material that is available online, but the thing is here we marry the process with all the aids, which means that when you have the theater actor, modeling something, the teacher becomes a better actor. The teacher starts becoming a better storyteller. The teacher actually becomes, is empowered in so many different ways as a teacher kind of goes through the program herself. Because not, as I said, in 1 month you can't convert somebody into an actor, into a narrator, into a storyteller, into an artist. There's a process. You have to invest in the process because these are all, high order skills. And the more that you actually engage with it. So the online material may just give you the material, but here you are actually being taken through the process, in a very organized manner. So children do it. So there's a lot of interactivity and there's a lot, basically the learning process happens if you kind of embedded the tools along with the process, and then you have the teacher actually taking the children through the entire discovery journey that happens in this.
So there's a question which I would want you to answer.
Yeah.
We have Kaveri Mitra asking us, why did you name it Karadi?
Okay. So, Karadi Tales was the first enterprise that we started, which is a children's publishing enterprise. And we started with the format of audiobooks, where you have a physical book and you listen to the story at the same time. So you have a narrator with very, very good music, telling the story, and it's a listen as you read along and you listen. And we had actors like Nasiruddin Shah, Girish Karnad, Saeed Jafri, and now we have Vidya Balan, Javed Jafri, a whole range of some of the best actors that we have telling the stories. So interestingly, what happened is that when we started with the Panchatantra stories, we found that there was no bear in any Panchatantra story. Every other animal featured, but there was no bear. And so we made the bear the Sutradhar. And then Tamil, Malayalam and Kannada, Karadi is the word for bear. So then it became Karadi Tales. And from there, Karadi. So Karadi is the bear in this. And Karadi is the Sutradhar. For all practical purposes, Karadi is like just a name, like Mickey or Donald or whatever it is.
So we have a question from Madam Shobha. She's asking about the charges. But let me answer that. Madam Shobha, you can go through, you can Google Karadi's website and contact, Karadi Tales, and they'll get back to you for this. We did not keep the session for that. And now going on to the next question, sir, there's a question by Reshmi PG. She says, is this in different levels? Are these different levels mutually connected? Is it required that the program has to be implemented in pre-primary before implementing in primary? Reshmi Umesh from Nagpur.
Yeah, it is not necessary. These are not graded. But let us say that suppose there's a child in class 2, okay, who's starting on the program. We will gauge where that child is, whether this child is capable of taking on level 2 or level 3. Because as I said during the program, our ambition is much greater than the syllabus. So which means that at second standard, I must be able to deliver 5th standard level or 6th standard level language proficiency. Only then we are worth it. Otherwise, it is not both the time and the that you spend. Basically, it's not worth it. So we will gauge which level is appropriate for your school for which grade. So you can start in the middle. It is not necessary that you have to start at pre-kindergarten. But we may, for example, a child who starts at kindergarten at, let's say, the lower kindergarten, would start at level 1, go to level 2, level 3, and level 4. So by class 2, this child has completed level 4. That does not mean that if you're starting at class 2, I'm going to give you level 4, because level 4 is already at a 5th standard level. So I may start this child at maybe a level 2 or a level 3. And then take the child forward into level 4. So this is something that we do very customized with every school, depending on the demographics. So it depends on what is the child's home environment. It depends on how well your teachers are with English, what kind of ecosystem that you're able to build. So you already have a platform of English. Now this may be a small platform or a large platform or a high platform. We will scaffold on top of it. So if you are already being able to do a certain amount, we will accelerate that. So it is building on top of what you already have. And so we will decide the level based on where that level is, and we will scaffold on top of it. So,
sir, we have a feedback. I think this is Madam Sheetal Bhatia, who's the librarian in Delhi Private School, Sharjah. She says, using the Karadi audiobooks in our library, the favorite with the kids is Monkey and the Crocodile. They love the voice modulation. So that's a feedback for Karadi. And we also have a question from Praveen Kumar Banerjee. He is saying, is there any official website of Karadi Path?
Yeah, it is www.karadipath.com.
Yeah, so Jeevan has already answered that question, I see. Can we only get the stories and not subscribe the whole product?
See, there is what you have seen here is only a very small glimpse of what is happening. So make that, take a look at the product in its entirety, at leisure, and this is not the forum to do it. So, get in touch with us, and then you decide whether it is worth the entirety or not. So in bits and pieces, I don't think that we will be able to give you the kind of outcomes that we deliver with the schools that are already with us. In fact, there are schools that have developed programs for Hindi and Marathi based on Karadi Path. So it is a school that has actually done it, because they have understood what the methodology is. They have understood the process, because they have spent 4 or 5 years in the process of Karadi Path. So Hindi is being taught in the Karadi Path methodology, Marathi is being taught in the Karadi Path methodology. So there's a lot that actually happens, which can't be gauged only in terms of the immediate result that you see. Because this child, as I said, who has heard this one focus, may use these words when he or she is in 6th standard or 7th standard. Not everybody is going to use everything. When I listen to something, when I have a certain kind of exposure, when my exposure quality is very high, everything I'm not going to replicate then, but you will find that the things that you do today are because of what happened maybe 20 years ago. The capabilities that you have developed. So this is, in Karadi Path, there are multiple layers of learning. And so there is, a certain value that we would allow you to judge it for yourself.
So there's another question which has been asked to me privately. So I wouldn't name the person. It says, do you people train teachers on teaching through visualization and feelings?
So yes, when you do the Karadi Path program, this is a very integral part of the process, is that the teacher is actually getting the same models that he or she is offering to the children. The teacher is also improving in terms of their modeling. You will find there are schools that will report that my teachers who did not know where to put commas and exclamation marks, the Karadi Path teachers have become so sharp with punctuation. I'm seeing that when they share their lesson plans, as a result of Karadi Path, I have seen them. So these are things because they are also co-learners. It's not as if, this is probably not, because of the way that we have kind of downgraded the teaching profession over a period of the last 50 years, the best people do not come into teaching. So if a teacher comes with, let us say, flawed English, it is only because of the fact that she has received it in a flawed manner, not because she created these flaws.
Yes.
Now, the people who are very good in English are not coming into teaching. So I have to be grateful to these teachers who are willing to come here. And I must say, how can I support you to actually grow with us? How can I ensure that, your English may have been X in the beginning. So in the government schools, for example, where we work, the teacher cannot speak one sentence of English. In 2 years of Karadi Path, they're giving interviews in English. So this is whole transference, basically, of all of these things. One of the other things that some schools have done interestingly is they have made maths teachers and geography teachers, etc., go through the Karadi Path training program, so that even when I, let us say Newton's first law, how to make that sentence, an object remains in its state of motion or of uniform rest unless acted upon by an external force. If I say it this way, I am communicating comprehension. But if I say an object remains in its state of rest or of uniform motion unless acted upon by an external force, nothing gets into you.
Yes.
So when the way that a science teacher or a maths teacher, how they articulate, how they express, how they use pauses, how they use stresses, all of these then become where the teacher, when she's teaching the English textbook, for example, also becomes a much better teacher because the content in the English textbook is still useful. It is simply the methodology of communicating the content that is a problem. So the teacher starts using her English time in a so much more productive manner. So these are some of the advantages that you will have when the teacher actually goes through the process herself.
So there comes the next question. That do you also have stories on math and science concepts?
Yes. So there are, in virtually most of the story writing, we try to embed as much as possible of other ideas, so it is not, in a linear way that we do. So there is a story called Crickematics, which has been narrated by Rahul Dravid, which is all about how do you learn mathematics from cricket. So how do you learn geometry, through. So it's an interesting story of a boy who discovers maths through the process of playing cricket. So in this manner, so there is another story also narrated by Rahul Dravid about how a child actually, goes to a king and says, I want 1 grain of rice every day and doubled every day, and how that process of multiplication, how exponential multiplication actually happens. So there are these ideas, but I don't want to at this point of time mislead you by saying that we have not yet. I think it's a very good idea, and it's something that we want to work on, but it will take a long time. Is you can teach entire chapters of science through stories. You can teach entire chapters of mathematics through stories. So that we have not come to that stage yet. It's an aspiration, but we have not realized it yet.
So there's another question. What levels?
Okay, Dhiren, the questions, I think, I'm also seeing that, people are still patiently here at the end of 2 hours.
We have 282 people, and wherein we have, I think, crossed the time slot by 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's one more question which I want to. So we are not taking any questions related to the prize, any personal questions, what you're asking about your child and all. What level does the Karadi tale start, and it is up to what level?
So it starts for private schools, which are English medium schools. It starts at the pre-kindergarten level and goes up to class 5. There are 2 programs for the private schools. One is called the Power English program, which is meant for schools which already have a substantial English ecosystem. So here the focus is on acceleration. So these are schools that attain functional proficiency without too much of a challenge, but they are interested in that academic literacy. How do I take it beyond this point? The Magic English Junior program is meant for schools which have a quasi-English ecosystem, which means that my children may not be coming from English backgrounds, but I'm teaching in English medium. I have some amount of teacher capability, but my teacher capability may also be limited because I'm in a rural area or a semi-urban area. So the Magic English Junior program works through functional literacy and then moves into academic literacy. So you will have a slightly different curve in terms of the movement forward. It is when you get in touch with us that we will advise you on what is the suitable program for you. So we have a way by which we gauge whether you are a Power English school or whether we are a Magic English Junior school. We work with government schools where the program is a little different, where the focus is largely on functional literacy, and we do this for all the way up to class 9, so from class 1 to class 9. But in a private English medium school, it is not necessary for us to be there. And so if you get this program going, in 2 to 3 years, your corridor must be speaking English voluntarily. The test of whether Karadi Path works or not is when nobody is supervising the children. Is English accidentally happening? Is English becoming their choice of communicative language? Because if I'm proficient in a language, I will by all means, speak in that language. When I have to work and put an effort, I am hesitant to actually move in that domain. I will take my easiest language, and that will become my choicest mode of language of communication.
So, sir, we put a full stop to the questions now.
Yeah.
And in the end, I once again thank Kritika ma'am and the entire Karadi team who was working from last 2-3 days to make this whole thing successful. Thank you, participants. Even at the end, after 45 minutes past time, we have over 250 people listening to us. Thank you for this wonderful response, and we'll keep in touch with you for future webinars.
Thank you all very much. A pleasure, Dhiren. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. And a big thank you to all of you who have stayed very patiently with us. Thanks to Pritika and also some of our team members who have been handling the back end, even team members from your side, Dhiren, who have been monitoring and erasing the annotations from time to time. So thank you all very much. A pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.